What was that disgusting thing someone you were dating told you, and it changed your image of them? He relayed the story of how he had thrown a full milkshake out of a moving car at an old lady who was walking on the sidewalk, and hit her full in the chest. He could barely get the story out, he was laughing so hard. I thought this was something he had maybe done when he was in middle school, and trying to show off for his friends. That would have been bad enough. No, he did this when he was 21. What a plain effing a-hole. F you, John. Similar vein, he laughed his way through a story about how several of his friends cornered and beat up a guy at a restaurant for heckling them from a table over, most likely telling them to calm or quiet down. The victim was apparently severely injured but didn't press charges. My date insisted that he didn't participate in the brawl. I didn't believe him, and was genuinely surprised by my horror. When I broke up with him, I told him it was because he lacked empathy. The story above was particularly bad, but there were others that told me not to trust him as a partner. He took it surprisingly well in the moment, but later started espousing woman-hating rhetoric, and was dumb enough to post it on his public-facing social media. He's now married, after having dated his now-wife for only a little over a year. I worry for her. My ex completely changed after we got married. When I asked him why he'd lied to me about who he was before, he literally said, "I didn't think you'd like me, if you knew." Damn straight. I was like, don't you think I kind of deserve to decide that for myself? Now, I just can't trust you at all. And he said, but then, you wouldn't have married me. Surprise surprise, we got divorced. It wasn't a lie, really, it was just something I said, so you'd like me. Once I realized that she didn't think lies counted if they were told to manipulate people, I was out. I followed you a couple of times, but you never noticed me. I love you. From now on, you're not allowed to speak to other men. All that from the same guy, from the same night, from the first and only date. I hope you made it home safely. Yes, thanks, he brought me home, he was my neighbor. Glad to see, the neighbor situation is in past tense. After knowing him for like 6 years, he randomly told me he was really depressed. I quit my old job and that I had lost a lot of use to him. The wording really threw me off. He was pretty good at masking, so I thought he just misstated it. Surely my use wasn't my career? Oh, no, it was. He said that a big part of his interest in me was my career, because he had hoped to have one like mine, and it's how we met, so me switching was a bit of a letdown. Eventually he clarified that even though I was now making over 5x salary to what I made at my prior job, and had completely transformed my life, and shared a lot of that money with him, daily, from good food to designer clothes he liked, the fact that I no longer worked in his industry made him sad every day, and he felt like I should have stayed in that industry to help his career by having contacts and advice, but he knew I was selfish and would take that the wrong way. Not really dating, because we had only one date, but this guy, on a first date, proudly tells me about how when his ex kicked him out of the house, she owned the house, he took an upper decker in all 3 of the toilets in the house, meaning he shit in the tank, and hid shit, his literal feces, between the mattress and box spring of her bed, and the guest bed, and also smeared on the bottom of several kitchen drawers, and in 2 register vents. The kicker? His version of why she kicked him out and deserved the shit, literally, he gave her was, she was crazy, she got jealous, just because she's wasting her life working for the man, and I still know how to have fun, and not let money control me. I bailed on that date, so fast. He proudly admitted to having videos of all of his sexual conquests in the act, on his phone. What a weird way to announce you've never had sex. My ex refused to delete naked pics of exes, as well as those that were sent to him by women he was just talking to, granted, from before we started dating. Which now makes it worse. Because of course I found out that he keeps spicy pics and vids of women he is no longer involved with, after I'd sent him what had to be close to 100 vids. We were LD for several months, and we were kinky, don't judge me, LMAO. I have to lie to you, because you'll overreact if I tell you what I did. A lot of kids become good liars because their parents overreact and yell/punish over minor things. There's a good quote I couldn't find about how, if your kids lie to you, you should ask yourself, what makes them scared to tell the truth? Translation: I will not tell the truth, because your reaction would be very reasonable and normal, if I tell you what I did. talking about a news story about the R of a minor. A very single-digit minor. You know she wanted it, she probably led him on, and then only said something when they got found out. Yuck, 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 what the F? I shit you not, I sat on the jury for a child R case, and when we first got in the jury room, there were a couple of women saying they thought she was asking for it. I reminded them that no matter what she said, she was below the age of consent. We ended up convicting him, but oh my God. I was shocked and disgusted by what those women said about a literal child. Only other gay guy at my rural, deep south high school, super cute. I was infatuated. He was out and very confident, which I really admired. Finally scored a date with him, and he ran over a squirrel on purpose on our way to dinner. Laughed his ass off when the tires lifted, and then crunched. My soul left my effing body, I swear. Months after telling my ex how I felt sexually violated by him, and ongoing abuse and arguments, he revealed to me that his first thought, after me telling him how I felt, was, "I'll show you what it's really like to be violated." And he essentially confessed to planning how he wanted to arm me, down to the detail. I already resented him, but this made me genuinely fear him. I'm glad he's an ex, and you got out of that. Threats like that aren't empty, or just ways to manipulate you. They can really be dangerous. My college boyfriend never seemed violent, but we argued a lot. Well, one night we were in the middle of a huge, bad fight, and he forced himself on me. At the time, I tried to brush it off, since he was my boyfriend, it couldn't have been the R word. But that was 14 years ago, and it still bothers me. Glad you got out before it escalated. While fighting with his younger brother about politics, and who was right, who has the blue check mark next to their name. He was 48 years old, trying to one-up his 34-year-old brother, as if he should recognize his wisdom. Ah yes, elite Instagram man. I had one date with a woman who told me she was in therapy for domestic abuse. I thought it meant she had been abused by her spouse. Through talking with her, she mentioned burning her daughter with a curling iron. On purpose. That's when I realized she was the abuser. I was glad she was getting therapy for it, but I couldn't keep dating her. That I should light its ass on fire when referring to my dog, and then suggested I let her go loose in the woods. He had never even met my dog, just had a thing against tiny animals, I suppose. People who are insanely anti-animal, for no apparent reason, are always suspect to me. It gives off serial killer vibes. This is an accurate vibe. People who can hurt animals at all, and not even give a F if it's someone's beloved pet either. Yeah, nah. That's not normal. Red flag city. It was something he said while I was with him in the car. Sitting at a set of lights, he rolled down the window and shouted, "Hey fatty. Have another donut." At a large woman waiting to cross the road. That was our last date. You didn't immediately want to have sex with him? Amazing. I was once on a date with a guy who made mean comments about a larger woman on the dance floor, gonna need a bigger dance floor type stuff, and who wouldn't stop bragging about his job and how much money he made. He also knew I had a fear of heights, and kept trying to pressure me into going on this 400-foot swing ride. I kept saying no, and he kept mocking me, saying, "It's only a small ride." Without missing a beat, I replied back, "You're a small ride." It just came out. I didn't even realize what I said until after I said it, but yeah. There was no date after that. A couple months after an ex cheated on me, and I gave him another chance, one of his friends, who I liked hanging out with, confessed to being into me. I told my ex/BF at the time what happened, and he said he knew, and even encouraged his friend to try to hook up with me, because you guys flirt all the time, so go for it, and we'll call it even. Made me realize how emotionally manipulative he was, trying to bait me into sleeping with someone else, so I didn't have a leg to stand on anymore. Some guy I used to work with asked me to hit on his girlfriend. He said he thought she was into me, and he was tired of her. So, rather than just being a normal person and having a conversation with her about it, he tried to manipulate me, and probably her, into hooking up, so that presumably he could kick off/end it. So weird. We had been together 15 years, I confessed to him that I was having thoughts, and was basically begging him for help. He told me that I was a worthless cunt, he hated me, and that he wished he could kill me, himself. Which I found to be very impolite. ETA, the reason I stayed was because I felt trapped. At the time, there was every abuse that one could be given with the exception of physical, though that was sporadic. Emotional, sexual, and financial. I felt worthless, and that I was lucky that someone were to care about me, a disabled, worthless waste of skin, who suffers from a crippling pain condition, which led to depression and anxiety. He isolated me from all my friends, even tried to isolate me from my family. After he said the above, I actually ended up in the hospital with a life-threatening infection, within days of him saying that. I had been ignoring the infection because things were so bad at home. I was scared to leave my daughter and my dog with him. Story, in my post history. He was mad that I took off. For over a week, I was in intensive care and having emergency surgery. I should have been in the hospital for weeks, but between COVID and me threatening to sign out AMA so I could get home to my daughter, I had managed to strike a deal of sorts with the doctors at the hospital for them to let me leave well before I should have. When I came home, he was still angry about me being refused to help me, even though I was still very ill and had a giant surgical wound to deal with. And that was when I decided enough was enough. My daughter was old enough to start really understanding how he treats me, and I'll be damned if she thinks this is what a relationship is supposed to be like. It's been almost exactly 2 years of careful planning, secrets, and support of loving friends who welcomed me back into our group with open arms. I am just waiting to hear back about housing assistance, and then me and my daughter can start a new and happier life. I'm happy to answer any additional questions. If someone reading this is going through something similar, I promise you can get out. It might take time, but you can do it. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and don't give up hope. You are loved, I promise, you are. I don't like having sex with you, because you are SA, and thinking about that grosses me out. What a terrible person. Good thing you got away from them. What a vile creature. SA already carries so much guilt and shame, without external influence. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. Thank you. I should have left after the first one, where he said I wasn't tiny enough, but instead, I basically gave myself an eating disorder to become what he wanted, only to be later blasted with that answer. On the plus side, I didn't put up with anyone else's shit after that, lol. I'm a vet nurse. While talking about the emotionally difficult day I'd had, he said, they are just animals, it's not like you're dealing with human lives. Lost all interest and respect, on the spot. He told me he put antibiotics in an ex-girlfriend's drink because he thought he gave her chlamydia and didn't want her to know. He confessed this. Like, WTF. Didn't wash their ass. Didn't feel the need to, because the soap and water from the upper parts of their body would hit it. If anything, your ass needs washing more than anything else. It's literally full of shit, and its location prevents soap and water from properly running over the dirtiest bits. First date. Guy called the waitress the effing N-word. Thank God she didn't hear. He and I had an intense exchange, and I saw his jaw lock up. That's what my ex-husband's jaw would do right before he was gonna lose it, so I was on defense and a tad scared, but I held my own. Then I made him very mad. I can't remember what I said, but I knew it was pissing him off. So I backed a bit and told a joke. He then made a half-serious joke about leaving me at the restaurant, and I said, good thing I drove. I drove myself in first few dates, as a matter of personal policy, so I can leave if I need. The date ended early, and I never saw his ass again. F that shit. How ignorant does one have to be to say that about another person? I don't get it. I never will. Edit. I apologize for my poor storytelling. I'm getting old, and my thoughts aren't as together as they used to be. When she looked at me, took my plate of food away from me, and told me I ate enough. I was given spam and an oatmeal smoothie. LOL. What? Were you overweight? Not that it matters. Were you having a meal together? Who is this incredibly ridiculous woman? I kid you not, this person has some kind of mental issue. Like a pathological liar issue. So, yes, I'm overweight. However, she was much bigger than I was. To compare, the pants I tried on that were hers fell off of me. Anyways, other things happened. She said this was part of her autism, but she would stare at the wall and say, that Chester was there, and she would literally get up and play hide and seek with this imaginary thing. She would run, stomp all over. Her room smelled like vomit, only to find out weeks later, she hid a cup of milk in the corner in her book bag that rotted away. She never let me use a rag to clean only my hands, because it was cleaner, which meant she never used a rag. She would tell me how she wasn't allowed to leave the home because another disorder she had apparently made her break bones, just like that, so we never left the house. Her dad kicked us out once, and I just showed up to the house, so I was forced to sleep in my car, in Chester, Philly. She made me the weirdest food, like spam and such, to make me lose weight. Edit, she now is bald from alopecia, and the way you worded it was super wrong, but now she has deal with something that she can't control. Now, she can endure the same kind of bullying I had to go through even in the relationship with her. I deal with sciatica, it's excruciatingly painful, and makes walking difficult. I walk with a pretty severe limp. This was new to me 3 years ago, and new to her. She didn't see the extent of my pain display, due to the amount I was working at the time. Our first time in public, walking from the car to Home Depot. She stops dead in her tracks, turns to me and says, "You need to stop walking like that, you're embarrassing me, people are looking." The tone of utter disgust and anger in her voice was repulsive. I felt so hurt, betrayed and disappointed. My entire image of this woman that I loved had shattered. Everything was downhill from there. Several months later, I had been taking an antidepressant, which she offered up the task of refilling my monthly pill sorter. Because I was struggling to keep up with my meds, each day had its own pod. I was on so many different meds at one point that I just assumed that everything was in the pods, and I'd wake up and take the whole thing like a shot. She failed to inform me that after X day, I was out of said antidepressant, and it needed a refill called in. As a result of this, over the course of the next several days, I had increasingly worsening withdrawal symptoms. One day upon returning home with my son, I had collapsed on the porch steps and blacked out. He banged on the door, and was screaming for me to wake up. I eventually was somewhat mentally there, but physically could not get up, or say anything. She finally came out, pulled him quickly into the house, and came out and nudged me with her foot, several times, and with that same tone from before said, "Get up, this is disgusting, and you're embarrassing me. The neighbors can see you." And then proceeded to leave me on the porch, for 15+ minutes, until I was able to crawl inside. There are so many other instances of this from this woman, that I can't even remember half of them. But I remember how she made me feel. I don't ever want to date again. I've never felt so betrayed in my life. Edit, just to clarify, I wasn't perfect in this relationship, by any means. I had my downfalls and caveats, mostly mental health related depression, ADHD, autism, struggles, but I was never cruel, mentally, emotionally, or physically abusive. She would get chronic migraines, and would have to sleep for 3 days, and without hesitation, I did what I could to tend to her, check in on her, treat her with the human decency she deserved. But when I'd have a multiple days of burnout/depressive sleep episodes, she would get irate, and scream bloody murder at me. I really hate that I decided to type any of this, and am mentally reliving it. Yuck. Edit, wow. I never expected this much attention on here. Thank you all for your kind words. I'm doing okay, or as good as I can. I'm still terrified of relationships, or even trying to date. Perhaps one day someone will fall out of the sky and land in my lap, but I won't get my hopes up. Yes, I've left her, she couldn't wrap her head around the why. It's truly mind-boggling how she saw no wrong in her doing, and still doesn't. I hate that I'm stuck dealing with her for at least the next 16 years, but I do my best to keep the peace, although sometimes it's to my own detriment. It's just not worth it to set her off, because it can last months of her lashing out and being shitty. I was in a drama group, and the girl I was crushing on was super sweet. Had been homeschooled, super naive. I never saw her do anything mean. I adored her. There was another girl who had some kind of medical condition that meant she sometimes peed her pants a little. She was very poor, and often smelled bad. My sweet crush proactively went up to the stinky girl in front of everyone and asked her, "Is that a new perfume you're wearing? You smell so good." The stinky girl's face immediately dropped, and she got this look like she didn't know what to say, didn't know if this was mean or not. She replied, "Actually, yes. Thank you for noticing," and immediately left the room, as a bunch of people who witnessed the whole thing laughed and my crush turned around and let out a huge laugh she'd been stifling. I immediately couldn't even look at her anymore. Told me through his laughter how he kicked the slow guy in the back of the knees when he was going up some stairs. Immediately ICK, disgusted, and anything else you can name. The worst thing is that he wasn't ashamed. I'll bet most of us have done bad stuff as kids, hopefully not as bad as that, but I like to think most of us can look back and be ashamed. I did some stuff a couple times when I was a kid, and I hate that I did it. Really hate it. He told me he studied a type of dating strategy called the game. It was all about keeping women gassing and getting them to feel like they had to have you. It was so gross. And I don't understand why he told me. I had worked with him for years before we dated, and he was such a sweet guy. But that nonsense was the end. Told me how her and her male housemate would take bets on how hard people she went on dates with would try to contact her, and how long it would take them. Would I stop caring friends and brag about it? Then preached that everyone should go to therapy. Yeah, babe. Some more than others. My best friend was 16 at the time, I was 18, and my ex was 22. He kept telling me how hot it would be for me and my bestie to make a sex tape for him, or have a threesome with him. He would bring up three-ways all the time, and I told him to stop, because it made me uncomfortable, and he only ever wanted to have threesomes with my underage friends. I have hypersexuality from trauma, I can't help it, as a response to me confronting him for cheating on me through sexting. We should have a threesome. No, not with a guy. I don't like having sex with guys. Only girls. It's okay, I'll let you pick the girl. I would probably end up marrying an Asian woman. They have the cutest asses, to me, a white person. You're the reason your ex killed himself.